Hello everyone. Good afternoon or good morning, wherever you are. I'm Deva Kumari from Entrepreneurs Ecole, Skill Development Journalism. I'm delighted to welcome you to today's EESD Journalism webinar titled The Journalist Perspective Navigating the Field and Avoid Common Pitfalls. We are honored to have with us Ms. Lubna Jerar. She is currently working as Gender Coordinator and Trainer Monitoring at International Federation of Journalists, Asia Pacific. She has more than 20 years of experience as a journalist in both corporate world and in freelancing. She's passionate for storytelling, teaching, and traveling. She's proficient in digital skills like reporting, video editing, search engine optimization, marketing analytics, copywriting across multiple social media platforms. Thank you, ma'am, for being with us. Now, stage is completely yours.
Thank you so much for inviting me for one thing, and I'm so happy to see so many women journalists from across the world, I think. First of all, I would like to say something to our one journalist because I am looking at the region and I know the type of situation that they have to work in, and it's very brave of them to continue to in this industry, in this profession, despite what we're seeing and the news coming out from their country. And I'm sure all the women journalists across the board that have joined us here, and of course our neighbor India. I have a lot of connections with Indian journalists because I'm also a fellow of their East-West Center's cross-border journalists program, and it was a very enlightening and learning process for me as a journalist. I've been a journalist for 30 years, but once you meet women journalists who are so brave working in their particular countries, because we know that every woman working in any industry faces a lot of issues, but if you're a media person, it's even more so. So even from like Sally and all, I can see a few others with their country names. It's so interesting to find out that every region has a unique character, they have unique problems and unique solutions, but I believe that you can learn from each other's problems, or you can learn from each other's solutions that they've found out to handle those situations. Like, for example, in Pakistan, we're seeing a lot of women being trolled online, and I think that's a common problem in every country for women journalists. And in Pakistan, considering that the situation in Pakistan is that a lot of people are afraid to speak up for a lot of reasons, and online you're given a much more wider audience and you're exposed to more dangers. And women started dropping out and leaving the social media platforms in 2020 because when they were criticizing the government for COVID and other things, they were being trolled and their private information and their pictures and other things were being leaked. We saw a lot of women leaving platforms, which is very concerning for us because we want more women online and offline, because I have seen in my 3 decades of working as a woman journalist, because I do work on gender more, I have seen that women's stories are not reported and they don't get the right placement in the media, whether it's print, broadcast, or digital. You would think that as the mediums change, the situation would change, but it is not as rapid as what you would want. So when our women journalists started leaving the social media platforms, there was a lot of concern and anguish. And then the women realized that this is not the right way to handle the situation. So what they did is that they went and got a petition signed, and about 200 women journalists, unions, and other organizations signed that petition. They took it to the National Assembly, which is the lower house of our parliament. We took it to the special Committee of Human Rights. They assured these journalists that steps would be taken, but as you would can predict, nothing happened. And then we talked to a lot of Indian journalists in the region, and we realized that the situation is worse there. There's a lot of strange things going on that I think was unique at that time for India, in which we heard women journalists, because at that time when COVID began, they were also covering the farmers' protest, and and a lot of other issues had come up. We saw a lot of women being red tagged and trolled and all kinds of things. which was extremely very, very scary for a person who's online, a journalist. And the way they tackled it, when we heard those stories, we learned from them. And then we asked our younger journalists who are very active on social media, we kind of uh, uh, conducted some digital workshops during the end of COVID. We had some online sessions to tell them how to keep themselves safe, but not leave the platforms, because we try to make them understand that we understand that it's very stressful, very frustrating, and sometimes very dangerous to be online, because we usually saw that the online activities can and sometimes did translate into offline. So we started giving them trainings, trying to make them understand that if you leave your space, which you have, you have to keep that space within your own power, because people want you off that space and they want to mute your voice. We need you to keep talking, keep speaking up. So what we kind of did, an unofficial kind of campaign, that the other journalists, women and males, they started where some journalist was attacked or was trolled. We all went and reported that account, and we blocked it. And it was very new for the journalists who had joined the online platforms, because as I was telling Maheen before, that Pakistani journalists were reluctant to come online, and it took them a COVID pandemic to understand the importance of being online. Um, so I think anything that I tell you, it will resonate with you as journalists in your own countries. We all seem to have similar issues, a little unique, but they're mostly basic issues. Male or female journalists face a lot of problems that are unique. There's problems of self-censoring in our country. As I was telling Maheen earlier, that Pakistan's been through a few dictatorships, and we have seen journalists fight back in different ways. But they've even, gone and printed a newspaper back in the day, blank, with few news that was given to them, because they did not want to print what was dictated to them, and that was their form of protest. And Pakistan, unfortunately, has been one of those countries where journalists have been ordered, sentenced to be publicly flogged, and two of them were publicly flogged. Hundreds and thousands of journalists across Pakistan went out on the streets. They were arrested, but they stood their ground. Now, unfortunately, we're seeing journalists in the back with other content creators taking their place, and the audience was unable to differentiate between a journalist and a content creator. So as a fact checker, I've also trained as a fact checker, which is, I think, a basic thing of all journalists. I mean, we're supposed to be fact checking, double checking our journalists' stories and anything that we do. So then we started for my union, which is the Karachi Union of Journalists, which is one of the chapters of the Pakistan Federal Union of Journalists, which is also affiliated to International Federation of Journalists. So these are all layers of unions that are very important in our countries. I'm sure you all may be members of your union. So when I came into the union setup, I realized that there are certain regions in Pakistan where women are not allowed or not encouraged to be part of the union because of traditions, because of the region's, societal setup, their traditions. So that was another thing that was very concerning for us, because if you don't have women in press clubs, women will not get they will not be given their rights. And IFJ is currently doing a project here we're mapping the gender pay assessment in Pakistan. So in that, we have come up with a lot of results that will be shared online when our reports come out. We realized even today, women are deprived of basic facilities like washrooms in their offices. Sometimes they don't have separate washrooms. I mean, this is a small thing that I'm just revealing. I'm sure a lot of others can relate to that. I hope not. But sometimes when you talk to other people in the region or beyond, you find that some of them are facing the same things. You'd think that journalists are vocal, but unfortunately, we see that most of us don't speak about ourselves. We don't talk about our stories. We don't talk about our rights. We don't talk about the problems we're facing. So as a unionist and a journalist, I've realized that we need to talk about our own rights, be aware of our own rights, and then talk about other people's rights. So I can keep talking. I don't like giving a lecture. I'd love for all of you to just come in, raise your hands, and then you can give your opinion or ask a question or anything, because I can talk all night. So I would appreciate it if you guys have anything to ask. So just continuing from there. So I started back in '93 as a print journalist, and then I moved on to started working online in 1999. Pakistan was not very, we weren't into digital platforms at the time, but I was invited to write I think it was an American website that in which I was writing some features. Then I started writing for other online things. Even at that time, to tell you the truth, even I thought it was just a fad, and it's just something, a new platform to go. And I as a person, I am not that, I love finding out new things and information. So I was very excited by these platforms. But when I looked into Pakistan, they were just in 2003, we had a boom in the broadcast journalism, and we were seeing a lot of private channels coming up, and people were excited, and we had so many people go into the media. It was refreshing to see young faces there. A lot of women coming in, taking on all jobs that possible. But over the years, we once again see that slowing down, women coming in, but not speaking up, not moving ahead into decision-making, places where we would have hoped to see them in the last 23 years. But so that is something that we keep talking about here. Now, digital spaces have come into, they're really strong here now. But still, we see journalists. They're very slow in taking up that. Women journalists are quite slow, but we have some very good journalists who are working online. I think India is ahead of us because they've been working online more than us, and they have very good journalists, very young journalists who are working there. Even there's experienced journalists, they do use the online spaces. Our journalists were forced once they were stopped from doing their job on the channel, so that then they opted for the online platforms, which I think they wouldn't have if we didn't have COVID and if there wasn't so many issues there. We've seen our fair share of journalists being killed here. Afghanistan, of course, has unfortunately seen a lot. India saw a lot of issues there when Gauri Saiba was, assassinated back, I think, 5-6 years ago. She was online. She's an online editor. I do look at Africa, and I see a lot of countries. The journalists are very brave there. We see them also facing a lot of issues. Seen a lot of people being taken away, taken out. They've lost their lives in the line of duty, and it's very unfortunate. So as IFJ covers the whole world, and we have chapters in every continent. So we get to see a lot of that going on, and it's very unfortunate that these brave voices are silenced. I think platforms like yours can help us to connect with them and talk to people from other regions. IFJ is doing that as much as it can through its chapters, but I think we need to even talk more about this. Like, a lot of people may or may not be able to talk to journalists in India or Afghanistan or Bangladesh. But recently, Bangladesh has gone through a lot of issues with journalists. We were issuing a statement a day, and there were like hundreds of journalists who were injured in the violence there. There were at least four journalists that were reported, women journalists, who were harassed on duty, and one of them was even there were attempts to rape her while she was on her job, which was very, very scary for me. And four journalists at least were killed in the line of duty there during these violent protests that were going there. Even now, a lot of journalists are being harassed. Their names are being given into cases, in different cases where people are registering police cases against them. They're going to court against them that they instigated violence, they incited people. So that's unfortunate. They were trying to report, they were trying to do their job. Even Afghanistan, things are very, very dangerous there. We've seen the authorities banning women, muting women, but it was amazing to see these women actually taking this floor back at the risk, literally at the risk of their lives, by putting out videos where they were singing, they were, speaking up. So I thought that was amazing. Though it's very scary, I'm sure it's situation there is very, very tense. If that's like not even speaking about what's happening there, it's something that is amazing that these women in Afghanistan or from Afghanistan based elsewhere, they do have that emotional attachment to get their freedom and to keep pushing back and making themselves heard, despite that they can, they might lose their very lives. So we in Pakistan, our journalists are constantly trying to upgrade themselves. They're trying to compete with content creators. So I would love to hear how that is happening in your regions or your countries or in your organizations, because I'm sure the whole world has been disrupted. The journalist world has been disrupted after the digital platforms came. And in COVID, we all saw a lot of issues when things were being floated out there. They were shared on WhatsApp, they were shared on other platforms. And I think most of the journalists had to actually were working double time to get those fact checked, try to put out that content. And I can speak for Pakistan. It was very difficult as a fact checker to make people believe what I'm saying. They'd rather believe somebody who's, spreading some fake video, some fake message from some pseudo Sufi, Maulana, somebody out there on WhatsApp. And it was so difficult. I mean, the whole of COVID was me trying to fact check my own family who were fighting against me and saying, oh, what do you know? This person knows. And it was very difficult to make them understand I'm a journalist. That my job is to fact check anyway. So at that point, I realized how powerful it is to use these digital platforms. And I mean, discredit a person who's actually working on this. Is that my job is to report. My job is to fact check, but the audience would rather listen to other people who are making it spicy, and they're making it so, I don't know, audience love what they make. They know how to create their content, which is kudos to them. But unfortunately, I think journalists were stuck reporting, doing dry stuff, and telling people something that they didn't want to hear. So at that point, I realized that journalists really need to, in Pakistan at least, really need to come on to the younger generation do understand that, but the older generation who have more skills or experience in other ways, we have been trying to bring the older lot, which is me and people older than me, and the younger people together, because both of the groups kind of don't like each other. They think, oh, what do they know? They're old. And they say, oh, what do these guys know? They're just, TikTokers and stuff. So bringing them together to make them understand that the younger lot can benefit from the older people, from the experience, from what they've been through. And the older journalists can learn from the younger ones how to use these platforms. So in 2019, I was in Oxford on a fellowship, and they were talking about TikTok being used by journalists. So when I came back to Pakistan, I kind of floated that to them, and everybody laughed and said, oh, well, you guys need to really back off. TikTok is like a kid's place. I said, listen, the world is going on platforms now. You cannot force your audience to watch what you're delivering to them. You have to go after them. They didn't understand that in Pakistan. Then I said, listen, they're going on TikTok, and that's where they're talking. I mean, Oxford must be saying something that makes sense. I mean, come on, guys, you need to listen to them. So now people are actually thinking, yes, TikTok or any other platform, Instagram, Facebook. Facebook, of course, I've heard is for people like me and older, but I think Facebook is also another platform where people still put up a lot of information. And then WhatsApp, of course, South Asians, or maybe, I don't know, others would have realized and understand what I'm saying. That WhatsApp is one place that everybody goes for their information. So things were getting very, very dangerous, as we all know, when people share, if there's a riot going on, or there's violence, or there's religious sentiments that are very high, people start sharing all kinds of videos and disaster photographs or videos, and people start believing these. So that's something that is quite dangerous. Now, we have to make people understand, and journalists need to be very, very vigilant in those groups and try to, to fact check that information. In Pakistan, we have a big trend of audio leaks and video leaks. They should have lost their novelty, but apparently they're very, very, interesting. And there's always somebody's leaks going out there, and everybody just people who are accused of being part of that audio video leak, they say it's deep fake. Now people don't understand it. Deep fake is very dangerous, but it's not so easy to do. So it's very interesting to see in Pakistan, at least, and people say, oh, that's deep fake, or it's not deep fake. It's so interesting to see how people react to technology they don't know about, and people believe it. They're like, oh yeah, that could be, that's not so and so leader, that's a deep fake. So they're just sitting there talking to them. That nobody likes me in my family because I'm telling them, no, Imran Khan didn't say this, Nawaz Sharif didn't say this. So all the different factions of our political followers, they do not like me because they think, oh, yeah, she's a Miss Know-it-all. I am, in a way, I'm a journalist. I'm supposed to know this. So my sister's always coming up with all kinds of these horrific cases and stuff. And I'm like, listen, I'm a journalist. I'm not getting these. Where are you getting this news? Oh, from WhatsApp and other kind of channels on Facebook and blah, blah, blah. So it's so difficult for journalists nowadays. And I think we need to be skilled and aware of what kind of, and we should be preempting the thing. Like if there's a disaster somewhere, I think we need to have a connection or a network in our region and across, so we can, we can verify the content that is going on. Like in Pakistan, I don't know if you guys know, we've had 2 or 3 scares of tornadoes. No, typhoon, sorry. We had typhoon scares here. So a friend of mine, a journalist in Australia, he sent me this picture and he says, I need you to fact check this picture. It says that this is a picture of people on the beach and a tornado is coming. Typhoon is coming. I said, yeah. So what's the big deal? So he sent me this picture and there's so many people standing on the beach. There were like food vendors and there's all picnic and all kids and parents. And I said, yes, so this is a picture. So what's the big deal? And it was captioned people at the beach while Bipperjoy or some storm was coming. I said, yes, it's a picture. So he said, can you fact check it for me? I said, I just did. It's a picture of a storm that's coming. So he said, why are people standing at the beach? I said, because they're looking at the storm. So, you have to, it's all about your own. I mean, I understood it. I think Indians would have understood it because we are that kind of people. Other people are shocked. They're like, what the hell is wrong with you guys? Why are you running towards disaster? Why aren't you running away? Divya, do you have a question?
Yes,
sure. That's all.
Yeah. So like, I would like to ask, like now every person has access to internet and they can post whatever they want to and they can manipulate it using AI and other technologies. Not a lot, but a bit can be changed. So like in the flood of disinformation world, how do you do the fact check? Like if I'm a person who's gonna do that, how exactly I'm gonna do that?
So the easiest way is to go to authentic news outlets if you're a journalist. So what you have to do, the easiest thing is just go on Twitter, go on Insta, TikTok, all the other platforms, and go to the authentic news organizations or outlets. Everybody has an account on these platforms. Check that. If not, you can put it on Twitter or on any other social platform. Ask somebody if you know somebody there. You can look for journalists over there. You can you can use your WhatsApp. You can use a lot of tools and this is not even anything that you need to be trained. You can just use your contacts for that. So I always tell journalists that, listen, even if you don't have the tools to do it, you don't have to do reverse, all the other tools that you use for fact checking, you don't have to do that. You just have to use your contacts. That's the only way that's the fastest way to do it. So people, I've seen a lot of journalists in the beginning, and even very, very, like Dawn is a very, very respectful channel in Pakistan, but it's done that. It's given a couple of news that they had to apologize for. They had to issue an corrigendum because in the breaking news race, they just kind of put stuff up there without verifying because they want to be part of that race. So I think the best way and the quickest way is to check all the the accounts that are out there, or the digital accounts, and always go to the authentic news outlet there. And we do tell our journalists as well, we say you need to find out an authentic source in that area. You usually can. I mean, if I want to look up something, I know the journalist I will look up in India or Afghanistan or Bangladesh. We know them because you're working, you're constantly on them. For journalists, it shouldn't be that hard, but it is because in Pakistan, at least, we're always in that breaking mode, breaking news mode. So that often, is harmful. But we tell our journalists, you should delay the news because your credibility is at stake. Don't put that online because you're not only working for the domestic media, you're working for the national media, and anything you put online, it will never go away. We try to tell them there's a cyber footprint. And I tell them that's very scary because we can take out, or anybody, even if you delete it, there are so many ways you can go there and get the information back. And that will haunt you. And we do see that in Pakistan all the time. Politicians are always haunted by what they've said in the past. Not that it matters to them. They don't really seem to care. But for journalists, we keep telling them that your credibility depends on that. Be that credible source of news from Pakistan, at least if you're here, who people can go to.
So Wahid has raised hand. Wahid, do you have a question?
Yes, Assalamu alaikum. Ma'am, I'm asking regarding what are some of the most common mistakes that a new journalist make when entering the field and how they can be avoided? Or we can say, what are the common pitfalls that new journalists often encounter, ma'am?
The common pitfalls a journalist faced.
In just commonly, can you elaborate on that
perspective?
Ma'am, like, what are the most common mistakes new journalists make when they're entering the field, ma'am? As you know that there are so many when you're starting and being as a journalist, of course, there's so many mistakes, so many pitfalls. So how we can avoid this one, ma'am?
So why this is a very good and interesting question, because we see when we were working for print, we were put through this treadmill that went round and round, and we were constantly caught on the same errors. We were told we were caught on any smallest mistake that we made, but we had the luxury of print, which was like 24 hours or 12 hours. The broadcast media and the digital media, unfortunately, doesn't have that cushion and luxury of learning through their mistakes. But having said that, you still need to be patient. The thing that I see in younger journalists is they're very emotional and they want to move ahead very quickly. So we have seen a lot of journalists who have moved very quickly up the hierarchy. They lack the experience, they lack the credibility, and then you don't see them anymore. They fizzle out. So we need to be patient. You need to have that experience in the field. You need to have that experience in the media to set your credibility, to be able to do stories that are credible, that can, outlive the others around you. And in the end, your name is the credible source. What I see journalists is they come into the media, and then they just want to go on their own, and they go out, and you have your own equipment. There's nobody stopping you anymore. What they want is they want to become rich and famous in the media, not rich or famous, but they really want to become something. It's great to do that, but if you want to be a long-lasting figure in the media, you have to be patient. You have to actually work on your stories. You need to cross-check your stories. What we are seeing is you have to have sources, as you all know. You can't just do one-dimensional story. You can't just put your opinions there. People have become lazy journalists. They don't want to go out there. We understand you have digital opportunities. You don't have maybe have to go around as much as we used to do out in the field. But I think even then, having said that, you do have to do your research. You do know have to do your you have to know what you're talking about. You should be talking to experts in that field. For example, when COVID came, Pakistan's media had a dearth of health reporters. Why? Because over the years we were focusing on policy, politics, and we lost all the journalists who wrote on climate. We lost journalists, health, education, very few sports journalists. We lost our experts. Now, when we sent these journalists out there, they didn't know what to ask. They didn't know how to tell the story. There was a lot of confusion. A lot of stories were being done half-baked. So what needs to be done is if you are in doubt of something, you should always contact an expert in that field or a journalist who you think, or some expert from that, from the media who can help you. There is no shame in going and asking people. I see people who say, we'll Google it. Google is a very, very powerful and very important tool, but I think there is the experts that you have in your country or even beyond. Google, internet has given you Wi-Fi. Internet has given you the reach that I think journalists in my time would have died for. I mean, you can reach out to anybody anywhere in the world to get that. So that's something you need to work on. You're a brand now. Your byline is a very, very important brand, which is going to be seen internationally. So it's the way you make yourself is the way you will be seen abroad, and that's how you project it. So what the problem that I see, and who am I to say that? But as a older journalist, I'll just say that we try to tell like I had a younger journalist who was in my team, and he wanted to become, he wanted to cover terrorism and all kinds of serious stuff, and he was like, he just wanted to become famous. I said, listen, you have to calm down. You will become famous if you work on your work. You can, how to slow down a bit. Don't become the story, because we don't want to lose a good journalist just because you want to become something now. You have to be patient. Media personnel has to be patient to get the story. Unfortunately, what we're seeing on our screens, and these are senior journalists, unfortunately, some of them, they are doing that. They're generating a lot of, hype and a lot of restlessness. And this is not the way to do your journalists. They've already established themselves. The newer lot needs to work on their brand. A very good example that I always quote that is Shahzeb Khanzada or Maria Maiman. These are young people who have come through the system. They have worked from the lowest place. They've done reporting. They've been on the field. They have seen things. They have gone and taken up the roles as they came. What I'm seeing is people want to parachute and just jump ahead and leap ahead and get to the end. It's a great way to go, but then where are you now? So that's something I feel sorry when we see a lot of very good journalists just fizzle out just because they wanted to reach the end of the race. So what you have to
sorry, ma'am, for interrupting, but the point is, ma'am, in today's fast-paced media landscape, ma'am, journalists balance the ethical imperative of truth-telling with the pressure of sensationalism, ma'am, as we know that even in South Asia countries like Afghanistan, Pakistan, we are absolutely so much sensational, ma'am, and we have a massive media pressure. If we are saying truths, or if we are telling the truth, but ma'am, the pressures are coming. So how we can handle it,
so
and
one
how we
thing
can
is,
balance this, ma'am?
right. So if you're with a media organization, I understand there's so many pressures there. There's so many things that you don't want to do, and you might have to do those stories, and there might not be stories you want to do. And then they want that sensational element to it. We've been through that, of course. We've seen that done. But what happens is that sensationalism may give you that small space of fame, and people will be talking about it. The viral content will make you a household name within seconds or days. But do you want that? Do you think? I mean, do you want to be a journalist known for your work, or do you want to be just known for that 15 seconds of your fame? So yes, I understand what you're saying. Our channels force that on our journalists, and they are sometimes forced to do things like that. But the journalist nowadays is not only constricted or restricted to that particular media house. You have the opportunity of internet providing you it's like the world is your oyster. You can put it on your own blogs. You can put up your own content. So I think that journalists who want to do good journalism and your media organization is not letting you, you have other options and venues to do that. You can, of course, everybody wants to get paid. And actually, if you're working for an organization, it gives you a little more leverage than the freelancer or other people who are making their work online. But you have to draw a line when your professionalism is there. You have to plan your future and work according to the people that you're working with. You will have to listen to what they're saying. You will have to follow their rules and the parameters that they put out there. But you can also do the same journalism on the type of journalism you want to do on your own platforms. What is stopping any journalist? I asked journalists, young journalists, to say, oh, we can't do this because our organization, we had that problem. We were not allowed to write for any other publication when we were working for a print media organization. I don't think the journalist today has that problem. You guys can write for anybody, or you can write for yourself. I mean, even if you put up a post on Facebook, the viral content that we see on these platforms is amazing. And we see a lot of stories coming from social media that the mainstream media has been forced to pick up now. I mean, there are stories of children, domestic servants, minor children being used as domestic servants. Their stories have been made viral by the social media, and then journalists picked it up. So now journalists have that edge over the employer or the media organizations. You're a good journalist. Nobody can stop you from doing good journalism. You have to abide by the ethics. You have to abide by the rules of journalism if you are planning to be a journalist in the future. In our country, we see a lot of young people come in, and often we go to university media departments and we ask those young media students, so what do you want to become? They say, we want to become an anchor. So for them, seeing your face on the screen and the glamour that they see in those anchors, they think that is journalism. And when we pop their bubble and say, look, no, they're not journalists, I'm a journalist, and and they're looking at me and thinking, I can see their mind and thinking, who are you? We've never seen you on screen. So the journalists, the definition has changed. People think that people who are on the screen, they are the only journalists. And when you go tell them these are not journalists, half of them are not journalists. They're just anchors or newscasters. People get offended. And they say, oh, what do you know? We want the glamour. We want the mic. And sometimes we see, in Pakistan, I see a lot of female journalists, reporters coming into the field. And you can tell by the way they're reporting, the way that they carry themselves, that they're not here for the long run. They're just here for the short fame that they want, carrying a mic, reporting on issues. But after a few years, you're thinking, where did that girl go? And I was very upset because I am a woman union leader. I want to see young women in the unions, in the media organizations. But when I see the quality of people coming in just for the fame and glamour, I feel upset, because then when they move out, there's going to be another vacuum of women. And the real journalist who is working there, the woman who's working on ground, she's not a rich. None of the journalists, male or female, are not rich. Usually I tell people, I say, well, if you see a journalist who doesn't have money, that's the journalist you should be talking to. I'm not trying to say that people who are making money are any different, but usually people think that journalism is a very sexy, glamorous, like a James Bond kind of thing. It is not. I have walked across, wading into water. We've gone into horrible places, stinking places doing our stuff. My children are saying, how do you eat all this? How are you smelling this? I said, because I've learned on job that this is not a glamorous job. Nobody knows me. When I go into trainings, people turn around. So are you a journalist? Why? They don't know. People don't read your bylines anymore, which is unfortunate. In my time, we used to recognize a person by their byline. We didn't know their faces. But now people are unfortunately joining media departments in our universities in Pakistan, at least, to become anchors, which is a sad thing. You should become a journalist first. You should learn the tricks of the trade. You need to understand the importance and responsibility that a journalist has. It's not about only holding your mic or your camera. It's everything that you're putting out there. You should be responsible for it. You should understand there are ethics of this journal, of this media, of this profession. And until we don't understand the responsibility and the power that we have in our hands, uh, we will not be doing any service to the journalists or the journalism in our country. Content creators are actually doing a better job, I think. They know how to capture the audience. They know how to capture the market. I just think our journalists need to be, trained in that way. Our media departments need to be training the new journalists and telling them, listen, it's not about glamour. You have to be a journalist. So that's something unfortunate. I think I'm sounding like the old mother who's always grumpy, but that's the truth. And people do not like it when we tell them that. When our unions go around Pakistan, we try to tell them, listen, we need journalists. I'm very happy to see women here, but are you going to continue journalism? So most of them say we're going to go into PR. I have nothing against that. Naturally, you want to earn more, but journalism is a passion, unfortunately. So you don't get a lot of glamour, but you get it's a very gratifying profession if you are willing to give some sacrifices. So the sacrifice that we've given, I think, is that nobody knows who we are. So that's unfortunate in a way, but I like it that way because we're allowed to do our work without people knowing who we are. Because even today, I see a lot of online journalists or broadcast journalists. They're not there to ask the questions. It's like they're there to argue with the person they're talking to. So if you listen to any talk show on our TV channels, it becomes a headache. I haven't watched a TV show in a lot of years because you don't understand what's going on. I, as a journalist, I'm like, what are you trying to make a point? The host doesn't let the guest speak. The guests don't know what they're talking about. Sometimes you can even predict what the guest is going to say because they have this whole, seems as if they've been given an agenda to speak. So, I think journalists need to take back that space. That's our space. We should not let others take it. Content creators are a different breed. They're different people. We need to do our job of reporting, of bringing the facts, the unglamorous, tiresome, but amazing job that we're doing.
What you said, there are hardly people who try to put in their efforts, put in the work that requires by a specific job. That's why they are even hard, like they don't even know like why they're inspired to be in that job. So like I feel like even the work that I have done, I have seen a very few people who are actually inspired to do the job. So yeah, so like exactly my question drives from exactly this point that like 20 years back, you have all this experience, like what was the specific point that you feel inspired to do journalism? Like when I hear it, I'm like, okay, I feel that maybe I shouldn't do it, maybe if my safety is concerned and all that. So like 20 years back or more than that, how did you feel that? Yeah, please mute yourself. So yeah, so what was your inspiration exactly?
Okay, so I come from a family of journalists and writers, poets. From my mother's side, on my father's side, I have lawyers. So I've always been vocal, and and I was brought up abroad, so I was a bit more vocal from compared to the average women around me of my age. Then I came into journalism because I always wanted to do something in journalism. That's because I knew my whole family was there, and a couple of women of my family were there. I also got my law degree. So I realized that I'm a law graduate and I'm a journalist. So why not speak up about women's rights or gender rights? Unfortunately, as we all know, at least in Pakistan, gender rights, gender stories are not very, interesting for people. So we see our journalism, women's stories are not there, gender stories are not there. Gender does not only, of course, mean women, which we keep trying to tell men that gender does not only mean women. Women, there is no such thing as women's rights. It's human rights. So unfortunately, a couple of very dangerous cases had to happen in Pakistan in the last decade for the mainstream media to actually take up the seriousness of reporting gender issues in cases um, even then they were trying to keep it just like one in just like the sideline or in the women's section or on Women's Day. So what happened was that when we had Aurat March, so there's this march that we have on the Women's Day, 8th March every year. This Women's March became a big bone of contention between the social, because there were some slogans that people did not agree with. We had you can say Aurat March and you'll have this whole argument. It's like igniting a whole argument. So what happened was that I was also, of course, very vocal about supportive of Aurat March, and people were like, oh, the slogans are so vulgar and these women should not be there. Then I realized, it suddenly occurred I was talking to a colleague of mine. He's like, oh, well, you guys always talking about gender rights and what I say, some gender is not only about women. It's about men. It's about transgenders. It's about everybody. And he's like, you guys these are such vulgar. I said, do you know the stories behind these? What do you understand by looking at these? So they were explaining it and they're saying, oh, these are such vulgar words and I can't discuss them. You're a woman. I said, that's the problem and it's not your fault. It is my fault and the large number of women in the media who are not keeping this conversation going on throughout the year. We only talk about women and women's rights or human rights on 8th of March. I said it is not your fault. It is my fault I didn't talk to you about this. You don't know half the things that we are, like that slogan, it may sound vulgar to men. For a woman, I can understand what she's saying. So I started talking to women journalists. I said, listen, it's your fault that Aurat March is being criticized. Why aren't you talking about this all year round? You should be telling people what's going on. You should tell people what the sexual harassment is. Sexual harassment is not only about women. So one of my colleagues said, oh, sexual harassment, it's just a figment of people like you who consider yourself to be liberal. I said, well, he said, my sister, my mother, my blah, blah, never came and told me. I said, because women don't usually go home and tell their parents or brothers or fathers, it's just anybody. They take it on themselves. If one of my colleagues comes to me and she says, oh, I was harassed, I don't even have to ask her. I know what she's saying, but she will have to explain it to a male. Why? Because we don't talk about it so often. Even women journalists don't talk about it. So I think that women journalists need to talk about stuff. Journalists need to be more vocal about issues that we keep hiding. That is my job and the journalist's job, whoever is able to speak about it. So, okay, I forgot your question because I get passionate about Aurat March.
I really got your answers, like what
Yeah,
inspired
okay.
you. So, like, yeah, I think this thing should be taught in classrooms. Even like I remember, we were given this topic about feminism. We had to do a panel discussion on this. So, like, some guy friends of ours, they were like, "Oh, like, why? Like, I'm not a feminist." I'm like, "Why you are not?" Like, when I tried to argue with him, he did not have any sufficient point, but he did not even agree with what I said. Even I talked with facts and figures in mind, everything, but they were not willing to listen. Or so I think this should be a common topic to discuss in classrooms by our teachers, by our parents, I would say. So they should train the female and male candidates, their students, that these topics are important, that one should have the understanding of it. So again, okay, so ma'am, we have one question from Iram Ahmed. She's asking, are there any underreported risks that women journalists face, particularly in countries cases like Pakistan, with less media freedom, that the global community tends to overlook?
I think the women journalists all across the world, Iram, are facing a lot of problems. We underreport them. As I say, we take it as a part of the job, but we shouldn't. So what happened is that, if you remember, I forget the year, an Egyptian, when the Arab Spring happened, a journalist, a Western journalist, I forget her name. I mean, that's so bad of me. I remembered her name, but I forgot right now. You can Google it. Uh, she was reporting in between the crowd. She was molested. She was raped. Her clothes were torn, and at that point, the journalist community and the media, even in the West, they woke up to the dangers of what a female journalist can face in the field. It was taken for granted, like Kristen Owen, she went and covered conflict areas. She never talked about the harassment. Why? Because women are trying to become good male journalists. So when you're talking about feminism, women don't want to be treated equally as men. I don't want to be treated like a man. I want to be treated like who I am. I'm a woman. I'm a journalist. I may be very professional, but there are some limitations to it. So what we started training through the IFJ, at least, we started telling our journalists, that women journalists as well as male, we had a component of the gender training safety there. We used to tell our women journalists, be careful where you're going. Go check where you're going. Do not just walk into a story. That's for all genders, not only for females. Females were taught to, like, when we often see female journalists in Pakistan, sometimes I'm very scared. They're wearing heels and they're going to cover political rallies. Why were you wearing heels? Why are you wearing clothes that are flashy? You're a journalist. You're supposed to be muted, not stand out in a crowd. This sounds very contradictory to what I think, that women should be empowered, but there is a safety thing that comes there. We will even see women journalists being harassed and molested in Pakistan when they were doing the political rallies, when they were covering them. So what we teach our trainees when we're giving out safety training is, if possible, go check out or check on your map, where is the vantage point when you're reporting a crowd. Find a place which is away from the crowd, find ways where you can escape if there is an issue, wear sensible shoes like joggers or some sneakers, wear clothes that and where, if you think you're going to a conservative place or a male dominant place, in a place where you think you can be harassed, wear clothes according to that. Wear double shirts, so if somebody tries to pull your shirt, you don't get. So these are very basic things that we realize that women, it's in the back of all our minds, but we have to keep talking and refreshing. We have to tell them, keep a separate phone, tell your editor where you're going, at least you should know where they are, don't stand in between the crowd. Certain small things that you can use to make yourself safe. But having said that, that is not only for women journalists, that is also for male journalists who go into conflict zones. We also train them to take some steps to be able to keep themselves safe, because you are a journalist. You have to come and tell the story, not, unfortunately, God forbid, become the story. And we have seen in Pakistan, Afghanistan, we have seen journalists become the story because they were not trained how to tackle certain, like covering terrorism was a big thing. They learned on the job. We lost so many journalists on the job because they were not taught to keep away from the thing. The people on the desk or the panel used to say, okay, move forward. Why aren't you going getting because nobody was trained of the problems that they could face. So these are things that we need to keep telling our journalists. The media houses need to have a safety guide. You need to have protocols to tell, like, you need to have helmets if you're going to a protest to cover a press. You need to have bullet vests, which sometimes don't even work. We have seen journalists being killed, even despite those gears. So they need to be told how to cover a story without getting hurt. So these are things that we need to keep talking about. I'm sure we all know these. Even on when you're giving digital trainings, there are so many things that the younger journalists know, but when you keep telling them, it keeps coming in your mind. Like when I go somewhere, I mean, this sounded so foolish to me when I was being trained. I was told, check the locks in your room if you're going to another city to cover something. If you're in a hotel or wherever, check the locks. And now every time I go, I am paranoid checking the locks. I was told to check the cupboards. Why? I mean, what's the big deal? But over the years, you realize, yes, it's important to do all these small things that you didn't think about. And we have been trained to tell people, to even block your doors if you think you are in. And if you're threatened, tell your editor, tell your colleagues, which is equally for males and females. Don't tell everybody where you are. Tell the relevant people. So these are very small tips that we can use in our journalism all across the world, I think, which help. And at that point, when we were given this training, we were all snickering and laughing and what the hell? We don't need this. I mean, who would do that? Who would love? But this happened. This happened somewhere. And one of the journalists we had taken to another city, she came to me. She's like, my room doesn't have a lock. And she thought it was locked, but somebody opened it. And like, okay. And we were like, I said, you sleep in my room. That was something, that was a learning curve for me. And I think these things should be taken into consideration by everybody. We need to talk about safety of journalists, especially women journalists, because naturally they can be raped, they can be molested, they can be kidnapped, and a lot of things can happen. So yeah, there are certain things that we need to keep talking about.
Exactly. And like I have seen people talk, females across different fields talking about this thing, that you should check your safety first. And being a
Yeah.
female, of course, we live in an environment, there's a almost threat of from everywhere. So we have to make sure that we are following some specific procedure. Being empowered is something, yes, I know, but it's entirely different thing when it comes to your professional life or the
Yeah.
career that you're working in. So we have one more question from Atifa. She's asking, what advice do you have for overcoming self-doubt and building confidence in storytelling and writing, particularly when sharing your work publicly for the first time?
So if you're working for an organization, they will be sharing it. So I think you should have all your bases covered. You need to be fact checking everything, that even after your editor has, given you the go ahead, just go through it. Sometimes it's human error. If you need to check out if there's an ongoing story and a developing story, do find out and do insert it in your story that this is a developing story. The numbers or the facts can change. Keep it as factual and simple as possible. Make your story relatable to people. um, and I would say keep checking your content, and especially when you're doing a developing story, which is something that we've learned also through trial and error. Because sometimes the stories are not stagnant; they keep developing. So you have to and be as honest with your audience as possible. They need to trust you and they will forgive your human errors. And use your platforms as well, social media platforms, to help circulate your content. Ask your colleagues, your editors, people to help you to get more audience, and you'll be on your way. Yes.
Okay. So one more question, which is, what ethical dilemmas have you faced as a journalist, and how did you navigate those situations?
Well, I was working for the English media. I began from the English media. So we had an editor. So we didn't have to worry about all these things. But we did once have an issue when we wrote, we were answering some questions about, we were young ourselves and, emotional, anticipatory and passionate. So we got a letter, but we had this kind of a agony aunt kind of a column, and in which some youngster wrote that I've been raped and something like that. So we gave a very, very passionate and angry reply, which got printed. So there was this NGO that reached out to us and they told us, "Listen, you can't do that. This is not such a." Well, we were very young. We were in our early 20s, so we were very emotional ourselves. So we learned that your words do make an impact on people, and a wrong way to deal with any situation can have consequences. Unfortunately, the editor has vanished from the media, which is a very sad thing, because the editor is usually a senior journalist who can help you guide and maneuver the stories and the angles and say things that are dangerous in a way that will keep you safe but get the message across. So that's one thing that I think that's a very unfortunate thing to happen for the new media. We were very fortunate to have editors and seniors who are very invested in our work. So as I said, print media is one place where you learn. Um, most of our stuff was vetted through so many channels, and so many people used to come down on us with their anger and suggestions and, all kinds of things to train us. So fortunately, we didn't get into that issue, but nowadays people do. And what they think is that they will delete it and it'll be gone, but it doesn't. It stays in the memory of the people who are in the field, who are watching you. And they are watching young journalists all over the world, because people do want to see credible people. So people are scouting your medias to see who they can, like, for example, researchers, they want to find out Pakistan, who's going to be talking about climate, who's going to be talking about terrorism, who's going to be talking about current affairs. So they do want to find some new faces. So you need to keep yourself credible. You have to set your own standards and ethics. You have to know the basics of journalism, which is factual. You can't give anything that is, that could cause sensationalism is totally out of the question. So, you have to do yourself monitoring now, unfortunately. So, yeah, that's going to be difficult for you guys.
Yeah. So, Shukriya is there. Shukriya, if you have any question, please ask.
Okay, thank you. And also, thank you for the great information mom has shared. So the thing that I want to tell is that when you're in Afghanistan, or all the girls and women, those who are in Afghanistan, when we think of journalism, it's a different concept there, because there are many things we are not able to do. So the the thing that which I'm thinking of, that I really have passion of telling the truth. So what's happening there? What's happening in the hearts of women and girls in Afghanistan, particularly? So how can I reach it out them? I know that I heard many advices that you can connect with international community, which is the best advice, and also which is the best solution as well, because we can reach out these problems or those challenges we are facing, and after that we can work together to solve those problems with international community. But the main problem and the main question is there: how can we contact them, or maybe if we can contact them, like how they can leave us, or maybe particularly if you're only 18, or maybe younger than that, or maybe older. So in that time, they will not leave you. They will say, oh, there are lots of girls like this. So it's hard. It is my question.
So, Shukriya, thank you so much for asking that question. And I can't even begin to think what journalists, and especially women journalists, are going through in your country. Because I'm working with IFJ, we are working with a lot of Afghan journalists, and we're working with your unions. It's very a difficult place to navigate. And as I said, I am so proud of the women who have who are so brave to speak up despite the situation there. What you can do is that, without putting yourself into danger, like you are connected to people outside that country, or you are out living abroad, you can help other people to do those stories and not mention you, for your own safety. Get the information and get others to report on it, uh, without mentioning their contacts or whatever. There are other ways to do it. And because, as I said, we don't know the extents of the situation there, which I personally think is very, very dangerous for people to speak out. The thing I can advise is that what we usually do is we talk to people around, or contacts of the unions that we have there, and we try to assess the situation and then talk about it. We try to get the Taliban authorities, we try to get their point of view, but we try to report it as safely as we can without getting anybody into danger. You can use your contacts with this forum, I think, and they can help you connect with somebody who can do the story for you. Maybe not even credit you on it, unfortunately, just for your safety, but the story needs to be told. But again, I'm going to say it depends on the situation. If it is life-threatening, you don't have to do it, because the priority that we could say in our safety trainings is your life and your safety is the priority, and your job comes second. You have to be a good journalist, but you have to be alive to stay a journalist and do good stories. So we hope to see these journalists in the future. That's why we keep telling journalists, don't become the story. You might not be able to tell the story now. You might be able to tell it later, but you will be able to tell the story. So it is frustrating as a journalist not to be able to report at that time. But then again, you have to see what the kind of situation and circumstances you're facing. So we do appreciate it. Personally, I can say I appreciate the things that journalists in your country are facing, and the women journalists, and how, and even the media people, even the creative people. So we do see that, we appreciate that, but I would advise as a journalist, tell the story when you can. And you don't need to use your name. You can use your contacts, just get the story out, let them deal with it. Do as much as you can, but not put yourself into the line of danger.
Great. So one last question, I believe, or maybe if someone else has a question, please raise your hands or ask your questions. So ma'am, one last question from my side is that like that right now being in the internet world, like we are flooded with emotional and traumatic stories from across the globe. So how do you like what would be your suggestion how one can keep check of their mental health?
Well, mental health is a big issue for journalists now. We've been talking about that a lot in Pakistan since we've seen a lot of people being affected by it and their work is affected. You know, in our region, especially, and I'm sure the Indian colleagues and Afghan colleagues can relate to us, we don't think mental health is a big issue, right? But over the years, we have realized that it does affect you. Like, for example, I was monitoring Bangladesh and constant death. And, we have WhatsApp channels, which we're constantly seeing content of blood and gore. And so what happened was one of our journalists was killed in Pakistan, and I I got a lot of pictures. So I had to share the picture. So out of all the pictures, I shared the less gory one that so my colleague writes back to me, he's in Sydney. He goes, Lubna, can you tell me why you shared this? It's very gory. And I'm like, really? Because it was, I mean, I'm laughing now, but it was a car and there was smashed glass and there was blood. There was nobody in it. So for me, that was less gory. And I realized, oh my God, I am so desensitized right now that I did not realize that this is not a picture that we should be sharing. And a lot of our journalists don't understand that because we are learning through our experiences. So I talked to a therapist. I said, listen, this is what I did. And she said, well, that's your coping mechanism. Journalists or people who are in the front line, like paramedics, police, law enforcers, army, these people are the first people who are impacted. They're also suffering from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And we don't think about that. Like in Pakistan, women may be able to talk about it. Men don't want to talk about the stress and the mental effects that they're feeling by reporting such dangerous stories. So we had this session in one of our organizations here. These journalists I've known as who are very, very, strong, serious journalists, they broke down and they said, listen, we have gone through hell. We have lost our colleagues. We have seen blood. We have picked up bodies when we weren't even trained how to deal with, reporting these things. And you realize that we're just going on and on because it's a day-to-day thing. But we need to realize this. We need to talk to our media organizations to, like in the West, you get debriefed. Your organization does probably send you to a therapist in other countries, not in our region. We don't even think about it. We think, oh, well, move on to the next story. So now people are starting to think about it themselves because they realize that when you go home, like when I go home to my family, they're all different. They don't know what I've gone through. They're looking at the world rosy-eyed and happy and whatever the media is trying to show them. Media people are seeing it firsthand. We're seeing the raw footage, Like one of the newscasters was telling me, she said, I was pregnant and I was doing a story. I was reporting it on, she's a newscaster. She says, I was looking at it. It was unraveling right in front of my eyes. I'm pregnant. I'm sitting in the newsroom and I can't even emote. And she said, I realized when I got out, I was so stressed, her body ached. And, we don't even connect our body pains or anything to our mental stress because that's how we're made. I think most of us are. And if you're a woman in our society, you're supposed to cope with it. So now people are starting to realize that this is really, really, tough for people to handle. You afterwards, you feel like when you're sitting in your family, I'm talking about maybe I was talking about Bangladesh, what's happening, and people are like, what are you talking about? We're talking about a drama. We're talking about, X, Y, Z. So you realize that you're disconnected from your family. I have friends in Sri Lanka who have covered the God knows what they've covered over there, the war and God knows what. They used to say when we used to come home, we're all, we're also choked up with emotions. We've lost colleagues, we've seen blood. And when you come home, they're all happy and good. And you're thinking, these people, you don't want to talk to them. You become aloof, you become angry, So over the years, people have started talking about mental health. And I think journalists need to speak up when they're feeling. I know it's job insecurity. People won't say that we don't want to do a certain story, but at the end of the day, fine, you need to keep a job, but if you're sane and you're able to cope with life and your loved ones, you don't snap out. And I see a lot of people doing that. You snap at people, you get angry, and that's not right. Those are the first symptoms that people should pick up on and think, oh God, there's something going on with me, or the family should, or the media house, or wherever you're working. So mental health is very important, and we need to talk more about it. And we are trying to do that in our trainings here.
That's great. Okay, so let me see if we have any questions. Please, guys, raise your hands if you still have any question. Else we are just waiting for 5 seconds more. Okay, so I don't see any question in the chat or is any hints, or is there? Okay. So yeah, thank you so much for all the participants who have joined in today's insightful webinar, a journalist perspective navigating the field and avoiding common pitfalls. A special thanks to Ms. Lubna Jerar for sharing her expertise and guiding us through these critical issues. We loved having you, ma'am, here. I
Thank you
hope
so
all
much.
the participants understood key challenges journalists faced in the field and how to navigate from the common pitfalls in journalism, including ethical dilemmas, misinformation, bias, and learn strategies to avoid them. I also hope that people must have understood, all the participants must have gained insight from your experience on fact checking and gender sensitive reporting in journalism with a focus on improving reporting accuracy and integrity. Again, thank you so much, ma'am, for sparing your precious time with us.
Thank you so
We
much for inviting me.
have you here. And we also look forward to connect with you on LinkedIn or other platforms.
Great.
And yeah, have a good day.
Thank you so much.